So we've also got two BSL interpreters here for anyone who needs them, and also for those who might watch the recording and need an interpreter following this session. So without further ado, I am going to share my screen with you and start the presentation. Oh, just a tiny bit of housekeeping beforehand as well. If you just keep yourselves on mute, if you're not speaking, just stops a bit of background noise. If there is anywhere you are. Great. So yes, this session is a bit of an introduction to the Step Up Exploring Collections course that we are going to be running in partnership with the Open Museum at Glasgow Museums, in particular with the Art Extraordinary collection there. And Claire's going to talk a bit about, well, in a lot more detail about the Art Extraordinary collection once I've been through the practicalities. So for those of you who don't know Outside In, we are a national arts charity and we support artists who are facing various barriers to the art world. So that's for reasons including health, disability, social circumstance and isolation. And we do this through three key programmes of work. That's our artist development programme, which supports artists to create a gallery on our website. And then from there, they can apply to be part of our opportunities and training. We also have our exhibitions programme, which is a series of exhibitions, commissions and residencies that we run for our artists nationally, and our training programme, which is called Step Up. And that's the area of the organisation that I look after, and that's where this project sits. So this course is part of a bigger nationwide project called Patient Artwork New Dialogues, and this project came out of a lot of the work that Outside In have been doing with patient artwork collections over the years. So we've worked with the Wellcome collection in London and the Vaudrey collection in Chichester very closely, and they're both collections of artwork that have been created in art therapy settings historically. And our work with patient artwork collections has been very much about bringing together artists, contemporary artists with their own lived experience of mental health issues, with works that have been created historically by people who might have had similar life experiences. So we just want to challenge really who has the authority to be talking about this work, to be interpreting this work, because traditionally it's been a very kind of medical perspective or art historical. So we're just saying, you know, can artists with their own lived experience of mental health issues be experts in this area as well? So this project, we were very lucky to receive some funding from the Heritage Lottery Fund, and it's going to be running until spring 2022, and we're working with three partner organisations. So they are the Mental Health Museum in Wakefield, Glenside Hospital Museum in Bristol, and of course the Open Museums and Glasgow Museums in Glasgow. So each of those venues across the next year and a half, we're going to be running two of our Exploring Collections courses. So our Exploring Collections courses are based around researching, exploring and responding to collections of work, and then producing your own artistic outputs at the end. So that could be a visual response, a written response, audio, multimedia, whatever you are drawn to create. And then once we've run two of these courses at each venue, we'll be delivering one of our new curating exhibitions courses. So this course focuses on both the practical side of putting together an exhibition, as well as kind of the conceptual side of it. So thinking about narratives and what story you want to tell with an exhibition. And so that course will lead into an exhibition at each venue, which will bring together works from the collection and works created by course participants during the Exploring Collections courses. So that's a bit of an outline of what we are going to be doing. So coming to this course in particular, it's going to be delivered on Zoom, simply because we are dealing with a global pandemic at the moment and we don't have much choice. But also we've developed these courses as online courses. So they're going to be delivered with lots of input from staff at the museum and also other organisations and people who know a lot about this area. So it should be a very informative and fruitful course. So it's going to take place across 10 weeks, and there'll be one session a week for 3 hours across those 10 weeks. And there'll be plenty of breaks during those sessions as well, because Zoom can be quite exhausting. And we can have up to 7 participants on each of the courses. So there'll be up to 7 participants on this course. And the idea is that you'll get an introduction to the collection, and then you'll be able to kind of start thinking about which areas you're particularly interested in. So is there a particular artist, a particular artwork, or a theme that resonates with you or that really interests you? And then you'll be encouraged to research and explore this area further, and then respond to this in a creative way. And once the course is finished, you'll have the opportunity to take part in that curating exhibitions course, and we can provide you with information on that bit further down the line. So this slide shows the dates that the course will be taking place. So it starts on Friday the 19th of March and runs until Friday the 28th of May. When you are applying for the course, we do ask that you're available for ideally all of these sessions, if not as many as possible. But we do know that things come up during the course, and so we can deal with things like that as they come up. So just a couple of other key dates. On Monday and Tuesday next week, so the 25th and 26th of January, we're going to be running some one-to-one artist support sessions for people who need some help or support to complete their application. So if you think you might need a bit of extra help, you can book in for one of these sessions, and once I finish talking, I'm going to put information on who to contact and how to do that in the chat box. And the deadline for applications for this course is at 9 o'clock in the morning on Monday the 8th of February, so we've still got a couple of weeks for you to get your applications in, and then we'll be interviewing on the 19th and 26th of February. And we use the word interview loosely. It's not a very formal and hopefully not scary interview, but just a chance for you to meet everyone who's going to be involved in the course, and for us to find out more about you and what you want to get out of the course as well, so we can kind of pitch it at a level that's right for you as well. So we do have some criteria around applying. So you will need to meet outside-in criteria. So you'll need to see yourself as facing some kind of barrier to the art world, and that could be due to health, disability, or social circumstance. And you will need to live in Glasgow or the surrounding areas, and that's a requirement of our funders. The way we're kind of advising on that is, if under more normal circumstances you would be able to travel to the venue to take part in the course, then you would be eligible to apply. We obviously don't expect that you are physically able to do that, but just as kind of a ballpark of thinking about where in the surrounding areas you might be. So I'm going to just wrap up in a second here, and I'm going to put a link in the chat box as well, where you can find out more and download an application form. And if you need the application form in another format, or you'd like to apply in another format, I'm going to put my email address and telephone number in that chat box as well. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, and I'm going to pass over to Claire. Thanks, Claire. And you're on mute.
That's definitely going in the Zoom handbook of things not to do. So yeah, I'm Claire Coya. I'm a curator for the Oak Museum. I'm absolutely delighted to be here today and see some of you, and I really hope that you'll take part in this project. So I've got a wee slideshow. So let me share my screen with you. Here we go. This is it. Okay. Right. From beginning. There we go. Yeah, so I'm a curator for the Oak Museum, which is the outreach branch for Glasgow museums. And in a nutshell, what we do is we take the collection out beyond the walls of the museum and out to communities all over Glasgow who can't own or won't access museums. And normally we do this by loaning things like handling kits full of genuine museum objects out to communities. We co-curate travelling displays which tour the city, and we also have a small number of community exhibition spaces. So obviously we can't do this at the moment, so we've had to look at different ways of working with people. So I'm just so glad to have this opportunity to hopefully work in this project with you if you join us. The collection area that we're going to be looking at is Art Extraordinary. So what is Art Extraordinary? And when we asked Joyce Lang here, who is the collector of the collection, who donated it to Glasgow Museums, she basically said, you know it when you see it. And as we go through the project, you'll see why this is. So what is it? It's a unique collection of Scottish outsider art, and there are over 1,119 artworks in the collection. So a really diverse selection of artworks by different artists, all in different media. So there's everything from plasticine to pillowcases to pen sketches, even coffee jars. But they all have one thing in common. The artists have transformed everyday materials into extraordinary works of art. And most of the artists in this collection were people who had no formal art training, marginalised, and whose mental health was cared for in and out of hospitals. So the collection was donated to Glasgow Museums in 2012 by this amazing woman, Scotland's first ever art therapist, Joyce Lang, an absolute pioneer in the field of art and mental health. And she believes in the transformative power of art as a tool for expression, communication, and well-being. So she studied at the Aberdeen College of Art. She's in her 90s now, but I'm not meant to say that. And she's still creating and collecting art. And I've met her a few times now, and she's just an absolute inspiration to me. So it was through her work as an art therapist that she chanced upon amazing artists who were creating extraordinary art in hospitals and prisons. And throughout her career, she collected over 1,000 works of art created in these spaces, as well as gifts that she was given from people that she mentored or became friends with. So Joyce had always been interested in this idea of outsider art. She'd read books by Jean Dubuffet, and he was an artist and collector around the early mid-20th century. And he was looking for a type of pure art that wasn't corrupted by the mainstream art world. And most of the the art that we see in our museums and galleries today is defined by a very long art history tradition, which Kate was speaking about earlier. And it's full of theories and conventions and formulas and rules that you've got to follow. And these all influence how we value art. So Dubuffet, he visited psychiatric hospitals looking for a type of art that wasn't constrained by the rules of the art world. And he started collecting patient artwork, which to him expressed an inner vision. And he called these artworks art brut, which translated means raw art. And he considered these artworks to be pure and free from convention and untouched by outside influences. There are problems, I personally feel, around Jean Dubuffet, but we can go into that in the project. Joyce too wanted to explore works of art that expressed an inner vision and a different way of expression and a different way of looking at art. When she was a young art therapist, she worked in a tuberculosis ward, and she noticed how patients with tuberculosis would paint differently at different stages of their illness. And she came to predict when a patient was going to have a bad episode. Patients would often use quite violent reds and oranges and agitated brushwork in their paintings, and then return to creating a more kind of harmonious, gentle kind of colours when they felt better. And Joyce wondered what artwork could be produced by artists who weren't constrained by the rules of the artwork. So she wanted to search for works of art which reflected an inner vision and explore new ways of seeing the world through art. So that's one way of looking at the collection. There's another way to approaching it. I'm sure there's many ways to approaching the collection. That's what's exciting about it. But another way to do it is to look at the collection through the stories that the artwork can tell us. And as Cheryl McGeechan says here, she's someone that I've worked with over the years on Art Extraordinary. And she says, oh, I need to move this thing up so I can actually read the quote myself. I don't know if I can. This unique collection of Scottish outsider art reveals different stories about people's experience of mental ill health and tells us what the hospitals were like and what it was like to live there, what things mattered to people from the past, such as home, nature, music and landscape, and how people wanted to represent their worlds in art. So, Joyce's first encounter with Scottish outsider art, it was actually through a personal encounter with a patient in a psychiatric ward in the 1970s. And Joyce went into the ward and she noticed this quiet, quite modest woman who was really engrossed in embroidering a tea cosy. And this is the first artwork that she actually collected. So Antonia had been found wandering the roads in the north of Scotland at the beginning of the Second World War. And she was taken to hospital in a state of distress, and she remained there for the rest of her life. And because she was originally from Vienna, we think that some of her artworks express where she came from, but they couldn't get in contact with any of her relatives, so she stayed in hospital until she died. And she produced loads of embroideries and drawings, using everything from scraps of paper to hospital bed sheets, just whatever she could get her hands on. And Joyce realised straight away that Antonia was an extraordinary artist, and she wondered what other artists or artworks were being created in hospital spaces, and she wanted to look for outsider art in Scotland. So Joyce was awarded a tiny amount of funding in the 1970s, and she visited as many hospital spaces in Scotland as her tiny budget would allow, looking for outsider art. And most hospital staff hadn't noticed any amazing works of art being created, nothing that they would consider art. So things like paintings and sketches and other patient artworks were usually thrown away after a certain amount of time. But Joyce persisted. She had chance conversations with taxi drivers, with colleagues and random people working in the hospital, which led her down a path of discovery. She even rummaged in hospital skips and walked around the hospital grounds, and she discovered art in the most unlikely of places. So Joyce's impulse to collect has saved these artworks from being destroyed and ensured their place in the artwork. So the artists in the Art Extraordinary collection, as I said, they're mostly self-taught. They often create huge amounts of artwork, perhaps compulsively. And sometimes the artists discard their work as soon as it's finished. And some never consider themselves as artists. And for many, the true value lies in the moment of creation. So that's true for some of the artists, but obviously not for everyone. So what I'll do is, I'm just going to give you a wee idea of some of the artworks in the collection, something nice to look at. So these are artworks by an amazing artist called Angus McPhee, also known as the Weaver of Grass. He was born in 1916, died in 1997, and he wove grass from into clothes and other items. And he's one of the more famous artists in our collections. And if you do a Google search, it'll bring up quite a few articles about him. So Angus lived most of his life in Craigdenane Hospital, where Joyce Lang discovered his work hidden under bushes and hedgerows. And she said it was a bit like a gingerbread trail. It was like she found the first pair of trousers under a bush, and then she went for another look and she found socks under another bush, and then she found a hat, and so on. And I really like Angus McPhee. I find his items kind of mythical, like they were created for giants, because they're quite large pieces. So he's one of the artists in the collection. Adam Christie is another known artist. There was even actually a BBC campaign a few years ago asking people to look in their gardens and in their walls for examples of his artworks, because what he would do is he would go and get a stone out of a wall, take it away, carve it, and then put it back. So there's this big search for Adam Christie pieces in Scotland. And Angus, Adam was a Shetlander. He was born in 1968. And at the age of 32, he was taken to the mainland for mental health treatment at Sunnyside Hospital in Montrose. And he stayed in the hospital for the next 50 years until he died in 1950. And before he went to hospital, Adam was a crofter, but he also liked to write poetry, and he would write letters to the Shetland Times, which was the local newspaper. And during his time in hospital, he liked to create and make things out of stone and wood, like these head sculptures that he would hide around the grounds. Now, this is my favourite. Sorry, you can't see the Gordon, but this is Gordon Anderson, and he is my absolute favourite artist in the collection. His works just make me feel really excited. They really resonate with me. So he's obviously a talented artist, but he's also a musician who studied at the Edinburgh College of Art before he became unwell and spent time in hospital. And just to say, I'm a huge fan of his music. He co-founded the Beta Band and the Aliens, and he also produces music under the name of Lone Pigeon. If you do research, things will turn up about those bands and Gordon Anderson. So Joyce met him during a period of mental ill health during the 1990s, and she encouraged him in his art practice. And they're now lifelong friends. She supported him when he needed it, and now he pops round to help her. And the last time we spoke, he was helping her with her computer. He was helping her fix it. And these works here, sorry, these are actually created out of plasticine, Japanese plasticine, because it's more vibrant in colour. And if you look very closely, these are portraits of the Beatles. There's another two of them, of course. We've got John Lennon and George Harrison. But if you look very closely at the George Harrison one, I don't know if you can see the detail, but the hair, it's got the lines of the plasticine. So you know how when you take plasticine out of a pack and it's got the lines down it? That's what he used to create these, and he actually created an entire bathroom covered in plasticine as well. We've got pictures of that. It's amazing. Just another artwork by Gordon Anderson because I love him. This is an oil painting. It's possibly a saint, but he's taken a clothes brush and he's painted a bunny face on it and added it. And I asked him, he said that he didn't have a title for it, and he said that he said, well, you can choose a title if you want. And I just thought, well, that's maybe not very fair, so maybe during this project we could give it a title together. That would be quite a cool thing to do. Another example is an artist called Marilyn. Now, she's a very unknown artist. We only really know about her because she sent letters to Joyce. And she created artworks from things that she already had in the house. She was agoraphobic, and it took a lot for her to leave the house. So she would build herself up to go out for the sake of her art. She would go out and take photographs and then get them developed. And a lot of Marilyn's work investigates the inner world of her home with photo collages and these coffee jar sculptures. It's a coffee jar upside down so you can see the picture better. And she made lots of these coffee jar sculptures, and they look absolutely amazing when you see them together. I think we've got about 12, maybe 13 in the collection. And what she would do is she'd put these on her windowsill or put them under lamps so the light would make them glow from within. So another artist that I'm showing you my favourite artist, what can I say? Okay, so we also have a lot of anonymous works of art in the collection, works that we know absolutely nothing about. Most of the artworks we know absolutely nothing about. And this is in part due to how many of them were collected. So as well as meeting with living artists in hospital settings, some of the works of art were discarded and discovered by Joyce through talking to hospital staff. So we don't know who made them. And as I said, some of the artworks were even discovered in bins as Joyce went on a rummage looking for outside art. So this mouse, this is interpretation that people at Leverdale gave to it. It says this mouse was made sometime before the late 1800s, before cartoons. So it's before Mickey Mouse. We don't know who made it. It is a mystery mouse, simply made of scrap materials. It makes us happy, and it must have been a comfort to someone years ago. So it's the oldest artwork that we have in the collection, and he dates to Edwardian times, and Joyce found him in a skip inside the hospital grounds in the 1970s. And what's lovely about him is his body is made from an old coat. His hands and feet, if you look at them, they're actually bolsters from a hospital bed. His wee eyes are made from buttons from a nurse's uniform. His wee whiskers are from a broom, and he's got a wee red ribbon around his nose to drive away bad spirits. There's apparently a Scottish proverb, and I'll try and find that for you when we look at him later in the project. So hopefully that gives you a wee idea of some of the artworks that we have in the collection and the challenges that we have. We know very little about many of the artists, so it all comes down to how we respond to the artworks and how they make us feel. I feel very connected to some of the artworks, and they really resonate with me. And some works of art I just don't get, and that's okay. Everyone has different artworks in the collection that they like for different reasons. So you'll have noticed that I've been using the term outsider art, and as Kay alluded to, it seems to be a term that many people recognise and use. However, when I've researched this collection with our community partners, I've become very aware of the debate around this term. And sorry, I can't really read this because I can't move the screen and see the whole text, but this is a text from the Projectability wrote. Says something like, art collected in these circumstances would previously have been called outsider art or art brut due to their connections with art outside of mainstream culture. Joyce found these labels inappropriate and preferred the more positive term art extraordinary. She chose this term because when she would show people, they would often react by saying, that's extraordinary, and that's how the collection got its name. So outsider art and art brut, these are definitions which were originally created by people in the artwork to acknowledge a range of artwork which doesn't conform to the rules of the traditional arts establishment. And the label often refers to art created by people with mental ill health, whose art lies beyond the boundaries of the mainstream, or those who are socially or culturally excluded. And there are many ideas about what constitute the notion of outsider art. These terms can be problematic because they reinforce a boundary between outsiders and insiders, imposing kind of artificial rules on who gets to belong where. And this debate is really pertinent, really important to me, given that Glasgow museums as insiders are now responsible for this collection of so-called outsiders. On the other hand, some artists find the term useful because their work can now be included within a category recognised by the art world. So some people find this term empowering. So I really hope that isn't a case of teaching your granny how to suck eggs as artists, but to be honest, I personally wasn't even aware of outsider art before I started working with this collection when Joyce donated it to Glasgow museums. My background's in art history. We were never taught about outsider art. There are no permanent displays of outsider art in Glasgow museums, nor in most museums. So what I've been doing is I've been working with some amazing people to research, interpret and exhibit the collection over the past 5 years. And together we've created and taken part in lots of events. We've run several projects, including creating a temporary community display in one of our community galleries. We've got an art extraordinary handling kit ready to launch when things kind of go back to normal. One of my colleagues, Tony, he's co-curating a permanent display in Kelvin Grove, and we give talks about it at every opportunity that we can. And what I really want to emphasise is this is not, anything that I've said is not down to any kind of special curatorial knowledge. We've worked with partners in the NHS, with Glasgow University, we've worked with artists from Projectability, we've worked with Leverdale Recreational Therapy Unit, we've worked with people in Gart Naval Hospital, we've worked with people in prison, just to name a few. And these are people who have worked to interpret art extraordinary, and we've done it together, sharing our knowledge and our own personal experiences and responses. And what I've been talking today is thanks to them. So here are some of the people that I might have mentioned and who you'll hopefully meet at some point as guests during the project, sharing what they know and how they've been inspired by Art Extraordinary. So here we've got the amazing Cheryl McGeechan, lecturer at Glasgow University. We've been working in the Art Extraordinary collection for about 5 years now. She even baked a cake with the wee mouse on it. And over on the other side, we've got Tony, the curator of Scottish history. Now he's the guy who was responsible for fighting to get Art Extraordinary brought into Glasgow museums. So he did all the work getting the collection into Glasgow museums and doing all the documentation of it and so on. And we've got Cheryl and Tony here showing a work of art by the legendary Angus McPhee. And here we've got, I just had a couple of pictures on my computer. These are people from Projectability who I hope will join us at some point as well as guest speakers. Get the chat going, the debate going, get some inspiration going. This is up the top. We have Simon, who is changing over a community gallery display of Art Extraordinary. Down below, we've got Morag, who's working with Cheryl. And on the other side, we've got Celine hanging up some responses to collection. And they're all really friendly people, and they're just really cool people. I love working with them. So just to round up, so far, we've only looked at a very small part of the collection, a drop in the ocean of over 1,000 objects, and the collection is full of stories and secrets to discover. And I'm committed to raising the profile of Art Extraordinary. I fell in love with the collection when I saw it for the first time, and it really challenged how I thought about art. And it opened my heart up to looking at new ways of how art is created and how we look at art. So I really do still have a lot to learn, and I just want to say I'm really looking forward to working with you and exploring the collection together. So I shall now shut down this PowerPoint if I can.
There should be somewhere that just says stop sharing, and then we should come back together.
Hide video.
Maybe I can. I think I can do it.
Thank you so much. I'm not very good at IT at all. It's a struggle.
Thank you so much, Claire. I love that. The mouse cake is amazing.
So
How
cool.
amazing was that? Request for my next birthday cake, I think. Thank you, Claire. That was so interesting, and hopefully gave everyone a bit of an introduction to the Art Extraordinary collection and the kind of breadth of what's in the collection and the themes and kind of issues that come with a collection like that. So if we go to Q&A now, so if anybody has any questions, we would love to hear them. So you can unmute and talk here, or you can write it in the chat if you would prefer to do it that way.
Oh, so I have a question. Thank you so much, Claire. That was amazing. I loved it. So fantastic. I love the story about Joyce going into skips and rescuing artwork. So you said there were 1,000 works. Is it so? Just 1,000? It's not, I'm not saying that's not a lot, but so it's 1,000. It's not more than 1,000. It's not an approximate figure. You counted the work. It's 1,000 pieces of various.
It's 1,119, but I think that we have about another 15 objects to accession into the collection, because Joyce is just wonderful. It's like anytime we got them see her, she's like, oh, I found this work of art under my bed. Do you think you might like it? And we're like, so it's around that figure. So it's over 1,000 objects, probably closer to 1,250, something around that mark.
And they're currently being catalogued and photographed, because your goal eventually is to have a permanent collection of these artworks.
Yeah, so the majority of them are all documented, and then it's a slow process to get them photographed. So one way it's kind of sneaky of me as well, but the more projects that I do, because in museums it's like a priority list. So if you want things photographed, you're usually at the bottom of the list, because all the blockbusters get done first. However, if I do projects, I can go and say, well, actually, we really need we need these objects photographed because we're using them in a project. So it's kind of sneaky way. So we've built up quite a few images in the library, a fraction, because it takes so much time to photograph them all. But yeah, that's what we're doing. So Tony at the moment, it's a small exhibition. It's just a case, a small case. Tony, the curator of Scottish history, he's been working on co-curating this wee display case in Kelvingrove with Project Ability, Gartnavel Hospital and Leverdale Hospital, and that's it's basically the people working on it. They've become the curators and they've written the text themselves, and that should hopefully be launched when things go back to normal. I would say that one of the exciting things, so it's really good to be working in different ways to explore the collection that not everybody's going to get to see, because what's going to be on display is going to be a tiny fraction, and we've got all these amazing other works of art that need researched and need interpretation. And we try and give tours as much as we can. We just try and open it up whenever somebody wants to. Does that answer you? I know I started rambling there, sorry. Does that answer you?
What I was trying to get at, I guess, was like on a practical level, if you're one of the participants in the Stepping Up course, and you want access to the work, is it going to be limited to the ones that are photographed or in traveling collections that you know about, or is there going to be opportunities to delve into sort of a deep storage space where there's other works that haven't been discovered?
So we've got, I think we've got about 250 objects photographed. Probably some more popular ones, like we've got Angus McPhee, we've got Adam, we've got Gordon Anderson, we've got Marilyn Walker, we've got I think Scotty Wilson's been photographed as well. What Cheryl's got is lots of snapshots that she took when she was just snapshots when she was researching the collection. Hopefully what I'm intending to do is, so we'll use those the works that we've got photographed as the core of what we're going to be working with, because it's all we can do. I've been in the museum once to clean my desk since March last year. We are curators and learning and access staff just aren't allowed in at all. What I can do is, fingers crossed, and if things get a little bit easier, is I can put a request in to get access to Glasgow Museum's Resource Centre, where all the objects are stored. And what I could do is I could do a bit of a rummage, take some snapshots of just odd bits and bobs. I'll deliberately take things that I haven't noticed before and so on. So hopefully I'll be able to do that, but the core of it is going to have to be working with what we've got. It's just a practical issue.
Sure. No, that's really okay. Thank you. That you've really answered the questions. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Any other questions from anybody? Just so you know, I've put in the chat the Hannah's contact details for booking an artist support session. That's just next Monday and Tuesday. So if you do want to do that, then contact Hannah. Also the link to download more information and the application form, and also my contact details if any questions come up after today's session. But yeah, if there are no other questions, then I would
come up in the chat, Kate. I can't see it.
Oh, it might be because you came in a bit later, did you, Hannah? I'll post it again though, just in case.
I mean, I don't need it, but you know,
just so you know your email address. There we go. Perfect. Okay, well, thank you so much, Claire, and thank you, Morven, as well, for joining us today. Thank you to Peter and Rachel, the interpreters, and thank you, everybody, for coming. Hopefully see you on the course.
Yeah, hopefully.
Bye, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye.